of the anniversary booklet as you leave. Make sure you notice the different timelines, the art, and the photo frame as you go through tonight. And as a bonus, you may take the table decorations and share the candy tomorrow with others, okay? So, I am going to introduce you to two men that need no introduction. There you go.
You know how cool it is? 50 years, and this is the first time you've seen Steve Leinwand with a tie and Tim Canold without a tie. It's perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of all ages, welcome to just another progression. A progression that honors NCSM's commitment to equity and to diversity. You saw Kathy and Chris, two good interracial friends. You saw Tim and Jess, father-daughter. And now we give you Steve and Graham, lovers. Two white males who love each other's work and therefore are lovers. Welcome. Welcome to what's best called a scripted improv. We have no idea how far we're going to deviate from a script that we think works. What we do know is that we welcome you to a discussion, a collegial discussion, about what older, very much older Steve wishes that younger Steve knew,
and I'm going to hope that older Graham holds on to some of the things that younger Graham has found to be the most important things that has helped shape and inform his practice moving forward.
In other words, as part of this 50th anniversary celebration, as we look back and we look forward, as we honor the older and the younger, we are simply planning to model a discussion that we hope takes place throughout our community. A community of older and younger interacting, and most importantly, not just at this conference, but every day, through the electronic tools available to us, interact and learn from each other.
And one of the things that we'd really like to happen right now is for our slide deck to start happening. So as we sit here right now, engaging in this collegial conversation, that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Super, how nice. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Steve Leinwand. I've been doing this amazing math teaching work, been a teacher, been a supervisor, been a researcher for some 47 wonderful years. I can't tell you how proud I am of the fact that I have never been promoted. I will die, and my tombstone that I will not have because the kids know that they get cremated, that they cremate me. The tombstone would say, 3 jobs, never been promoted. Do you know what that means? That means I was ready to do whatever that job was as a teacher, as a state leader, and as a researcher for the rest of my life. That has been a blessing that I cannot tell you how powerful and how great. And Graham, who the heck are you, Mr. Canadian interloper?
Well, I'm someone who has been in this education profession for 1/3 of the time that Steve has been in this profession. I'm also somebody very grateful to NCSM for giving us 2 mics, because if there was one, you know that I would never see. And may I share this one thing here, is as I was traveling up here on my plane this morning, I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, headed up this way from Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, from Atlanta, Georgia, but do not say fix and reckon yonder y'all.
Y'all.
Because, as Steve says, I'm Canadian. But as we go along here, I would like to show you, I got here on an airplane. The first conference that Steve went to in 1928, he needed to travel on a horse.
So, I barely am up at 7 o'clock this morning. I get a tweet from this crazy dude saying, hey man, you gotta shoot, are you on a horse? And of course, I do, because everything in our lives is sitting on our iPhone, and it blew his mind. So then he tweets me back and he says, I'm still laughing, dude. And you were gonna say something about that beard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's great is once I knew that I was going to start speaking and having this chat here with Steve, is the best part about this is I started growing this 4 weeks ago. So those of you that looked at me today and say, Graham, why are you so shaggy showing up to a professional conversation, to a professional conference? Because I've been trying to be Steve Leinwand, but the problem is he shaved this morning.
Yeah, me and Richard Dixon, it's really great. My friend, before we dig in, I want to ask you guys to just see how hard this is. I want you to see what we're going to try and do tonight. Take a second right now. Turn to your partner and answer the question. What's the one thing that you wish you could go back and tell your younger self? Yeah.
You have 1 minute. Share with the person you're next to. Go ahead.
Go.
Up. I want to make sure that you're widely aware that this is Steve's talk, not yours. And therefore, go ahead, Steve.
So this is not fair. Okay? You had 1 minute. Graham and I had 3 weeks to think about this. And so what I want to share with you is what's the purpose of our work. I want you to think about the fact that, like most teachers, as we think back, I spent most of my time focusing far more on my teaching than their learning. I think that's pretty typical. I think that's pretty typical as we learn our craft. The problem is that there are a whole lot of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that still haven't figured out that it's not about their teaching, but it's about their learning. Every great teacher figures that out and realizes that the important issue is pausing and realizing that their work is about someone else's learning. Maybe that's why it's so hard to get people to do formative assessment, because it forces them to confront the reality of how much or how little of their learning goes on. But I gotta tell you something, guys. It took me a hell of a lot longer to figure out that as a supervisor, as a leader, I spend far too much time worrying about my leading, my coaching, my wonderful evaluations, aren't I cool, my reputation, than I did about your learning, about their changes, about the value added that I'd engendered. And gang, the fact that leaders are only as effective as the changes that they engender in others. Ask yourself, what do you want to tell the younger you that you wished you knew then? What is it that really makes the difference when we move from mediocre beginning teacher to accomplished teacher? What is the change that goes on when we recognize that as a leader, it is not about us. It is about what happens to them that makes us a leader. I'm convinced that I would have been so much more impactful if I knew that 30 years ago.
And so what's great about this is, as I listen to Steve share these whole ideas, is the fact that I would not be standing up here and feel empowered enough to say, to speak, to do the things that I am doing today without the 50 years and the leaders that have been here before me. So if you are, let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. It's amazing to see the change, even in my 15 years of education, that has changed. Just the way that I've changed as a person, as a teacher, as a husband, everything has changed because of what's happened in this community.
So these people don't give a damn about me anymore, Graham. I'm old and over the hill. The real question is, we care about you because you are part of the leadership cadre of the next generation. We depend upon you when we are just collecting Social Security. And so what everyone in this room cares about is when you think about your hopes and your dreams, what is something that you hope the older Graham looks back and has learned or knows before he gets as old as the hell I am?
Well, in 90 years from now... No, I can't help but think about my first couple years of teaching. I can honestly say, before I connected with this community, before I connected on Twitter, for those of you who are older, Twitter is online. You might not know what it is. You might be scared of it, but I will tell you right now, if you want to know what is happening in math education 3 years from now, get on Twitter today. It is a really powerful tool. And so I think about my first couple years of teaching when I think about me, and then something clicked. I surrounded myself around people who are smarter than me. And in doing so, I learned that vulnerability is the birthplace of professional growth. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to step outside of my box and say, hey, I need help. But here's the thing. How do we empower the people who are not in this room to know that it's okay to be vulnerable?
It's okay to be vulnerable when we make mistakes and laugh. When we make mistakes and apologize. When we make mistakes and remind people that you cannot be a leader who doesn't make mistakes. We remind people that there is hope for what they can do and their vulnerability when we recognize that it's time to just ask for forgiveness. Because asking for permission in this business only wastes everybody's time.
And Lord knows you never ask for permission.
No, I don't know what that word means. And so what we're going to do is one more round and get even more serious of this if only we knew, and then we're going to call it an evening and open the bars even more open than they currently are. So I need to tell you, seriously, a discussion, if only I could say to Graham, if only I knew then. I've been working for the last 4 years on and off with the Success Academy Charter Schools. You heard Pedro Noguera this morning. I mean, what he said is so important. I want to put an exclamation point on what you heard Pedro say. I want to turn to some data. I want you to understand that, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yes. Success Academy Charter Schools, New York City. Almost all black and Hispanic. The schools are in Bed-Stuy, Harlem, and South Bronx. I want you to understand that there are 15,000 scholars, 86% are black and Hispanic, and the average household income in the school district they represent is $32,000. And they are the highest performing school district in New York State with 95% math proficiency in 2017. Hey guys, you need to understand, there's Scarsdale. Scarsdale sits up the road. Scarsdale is 6% black and Hispanic. Household income, $291,000. There are only 5,000 privileged kids in Scarsdale, and they're only at 82%, 5th on the New York State ranking. I am shamed. I am shamed by the number of years in Connecticut that we tried to make a difference in Hartford, in New Haven, in Bridgeport, in Waterbury, in Stamford, in Stratford. Ladies and gentlemen, I was a complete, abject failure, and so was the state. Because deep down, we honestly didn't believe those kids could learn. We all know that it's not my words, it's not Pedro's words, but this issue of equity, this issue where the president, love him or hate him, has risen up an entire cadre of people, women who were hiding, African Americans who were hiding, youth that were hiding, people who understand that this society has to be better than the one that I have helped to produce. What I hope the Grahams of the world understand is it is not your color, it's not your poverty, it's not your race. It is what we do in the 3 million classrooms of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the indispensable piece of moving that forward. Teachers cannot and will not unless we do. If only I knew that. If only I knew it so viscerally as a white male of privilege, as a straight white male of privilege, as Matt Larson says, 30 years ago, we could have done so much more. And Grant, on that incredibly heavy note, loosen things up, man.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can't help but think about when we start talking about how equity, how NCSM has gone ahead and grabbed this by the scruff of the neck. And they said if nobody's going to make the change, it needs to start with us. So there's 200 people, 250 people in this room right now. This is where change starts. You might not be with your colleagues when you're back in your district, but now is the time to change. But when you're back in your district, I can't help but think about 2016, when I was in San Francisco, and I was listening to ShadowCon, and Kanika Turner was talking about inviting people to the math party. When you're back in your district, are you inviting people to the math party that you sit at? When you go to a conference, do you sit with the cliques that you always hang out with? Or do you go and sit with the teacher who's by themselves? Every single time you walk inside a session, there's one teacher that's sat by themselves. There should never be one teacher sat by themselves. And it's up to us to step up from our cliques, to walk to that empty table, and to sit down next to that teacher and say, tell me your story. That is what really makes it move.
So there's our tale. Two lovers of each other's work. Hopes and dreams and wishes. Diverse experiences, diverse perspectives, explored with mutual respect and immense admiration. Collegiate communication that allows us to explore and reflect, revise our own thinking, re-engage in the actions that they're depending upon us to take. Thanks, guys.